Hello, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. I'd like to just take a few minutes to give you a quick snapshot of the current state of open source in IoT. First, let me tell you a little bit about my background in the Internet of Things. For the last few years, I've been providing consulting and advisory services to the leaders of technology companies and helping them use the lean startup and business model canvas methods to create, fix or fill gaps in their business model. Also, around Internet of Things and mobility, I've been helping companies to develop or implement product and market offer innovations and sales and marketing programs. I came to this current work because of the 16 years or more that I spent in the AT&T family. In that organization, I led marketing and product management teams, including over 5 years leading the enterprise Internet of Things marketing and product management. I also was involved in leading the device portfolio of both stocked and non-stocked devices. And in Internet of Things, the non-stocked devices would include things like gateways and machine-to-machine endpoints. I also worked on core networks and enablers and mobility services and applications, which in Internet of Things, including launching into the enterprise channel, the AT&T Control Center powered by Jasper Wireless. So for over 10 years now, I have been hands-on with the DNA, that is devices, networks and applications of Internet of Things. So let's start with a level set on just what is open source. You can see here on the left-hand side the 10 criteria defined by the Open Source Initiative. Of course, the number one and critical definition criteria is that the source code is actually available. The other key category and requirement is that there is an appropriate license. And the license is what defines the word open, because this is the terms under which the source code can be legally copied, distributed, and modified. Now, it turns out there are various licenses commonly used, such as the OSI GNU General Public License, and another one that's relatively or fairly equivalent to it is the Apache version 2.0. There are several licenses with equivalent or similar intents. However, it is important to realize that not all open source is equally open. It all depends on the terms and conditions defined within the license that applies. And in fact, some open source is less open than others, and therefore you see different license types, like the lesser GPL license, which actually gives less rights to the user of the open source. So the key point that I wanted to call out on this slide is that there are various degrees of openness, and you need to understand those differences if you are going to work with open source. Let's now move on and take a look at why open source is even relevant to the world of Internet of Things. Well, it really all starts with some of the key problems that I think we'd all agree we currently face as an industry in the Internet of Things. And the number one problem is complexity. Given the variety of devices and networks and applications that have to be integrated together to deliver an Internet of Things solution, you can see from the diagram that's shown on the left pictorially how complex this world is. It's made more complex further by the fact that there are a myriad of proprietary technologies used within the Internet of Things, especially if you consider legacy applications. So open source is a solution to this problem. Open source can provide us common platforms for commodity functionality. It also therefore gives the developers and customer community confidence that those platforms will have long lives and be stable. The key drivers of all the benefits that people find in using open source is, number one, open source solutions tend to drive down to lower costs. Also, it gives users and the industry interoperability. from multi-source provided solutions. So the key beneficiaries derived important benefits, and those are, for example, the developers don't only get the low cost of entry, but they get the low cost of ongoing development benefit, plus they get a ready access to source code and documentation, and very importantly for developers, there is a community to which they can participate with and seek help from. The suppliers get the benefit of a reduced BOM cost, particularly as it relates to ongoing software licensing fees, which are greatly reduced, as mentioned a minute ago, when using open source components. This allows the suppliers to then optimize their investment and development to that part of their solution where they most innovate and add most value. And this in turn therefore leads to an acceleration and a larger market. Buyers get the benefit that they get to mitigate risk, they get a lower total cost of ownership, and they get an expanded choice of solutions from multiple vendors. Now let's take a look at where open source fits within the architecture of IoT. First, let's keep in mind that IoT solutions are usually integrated into a larger IT infrastructure and have to interoperate with an extensive array of IT systems. Much of corporate IT systems today are already heavily using and dependent on open source solutions. So therefore, by adjacency alone, IoT is already highly dependent on open source. Some examples that you see here in the blue satellite bubbles on this diagram are the devices themselves use open source operating systems, particularly in the gateways, such as Linux. Or you also can see that the back-end file systems and big data platforms are using distributed network infrastructure like Hadoop. Interesting and more newly emerging open source areas in the IT world that are very valuable to the Internet of Things, for example up at the 1 or 2 o'clock position on this diagram, is the cloud infrastructure, as the open source solution called OpenStack is becoming available. And then another very interesting area over at 9 o'clock is open source hardware. The Arduino platform has taken off dramatically over the last few years. Now let's though look specifically at IoT itself, as shown and represented in this diagram by the dashed line and boxes in the middle. Within IoT in particular, there are really 3 main areas where open source is playing a major role. The first is in application frameworks and runtimes. The second are communication protocols. And the third is in IoT development tools. From that more architectural view, let's now segue and take a more organizational, structural view of the current state of play of open source in Internet of Things. Now, first and foremost, it's important to recognize that open source solutions are themselves built on top of a solid foundation of open standards. And so on the bottom half of this sheet, you can see some of the key players who provide standards for IoT. And I've called out underneath these standards some of the particular initiatives and specifications that they are publishing. So the open source that you see on the top half of the sheet gives you the picture of some of the major organizations who are very active in IoT. I've just taken an opportunity to give rather a personal and informal categorization to help you understand the variety and how they are organized, both amongst themselves and across the industry overall. So let's start in the top left. The horizontal plays. The Eclipse org is actually a very well established and broadly active organization supporting and publishing open source initiatives in many aspects of information technology. but they also have a technical committee and sub-team dedicated to IoT, and that's why I call out the IoT Eclipse org here. Just as one example, the OM to M source code initiative is a implementation of the one M to M specification that you see further down at the bottom of the page. So that is an example relevant to today's workshop of how 1M to M as a standard is being implemented by the IoT Eclipse org in one of their many projects. This version of OM to M will be coming available relatively soon. The current version is an implementation based on a prior standard from Etsy. And just as another example, the IoT Eclipse org actually has many projects, approximately 20 of them, of a wide variety of types, and I just show as one example the OM to M to show how one source project relates to another standard initiative. The other horizontal I mention here is Contiki, an operating system, an open source operating system for IoT. The next big category is home automation. This is where they have been called out as a category because of the sheer volume and activity and perception of this as an early market with much opportunity. The All Seen Alliance and their All Join open source program being well led by Qualcomm but has very active membership. IoTivity is actually the open source initiative sponsored by the Open Interconnect Consortium that you see in the standards bodies down below, has a strong leadership from Intel. The Open Hab is another key initiative going on in home automation. And then thirdly, the corporate-led group. I call them out in this way because these initiatives, while truly open source, have primarily a strong leadership and involvement from a particular branded provider. For example, ARM driving a lot of the effort around their Mbed platform. Ericsson have initiatives, and so does Samsung, for example, in their support of Tizen as the mobile and wearables operating system. Of particular note, recently announced in May of 2015 was the Google initiative called Brillo, expected to actually launch soon, probably in the third quarter of this year. So an overall big picture on the state of play, a couple of things I'd like to call out. Most of these initiatives actually have tens or even hundreds of members, and many of those member companies may be members of multiple of these programs. The IoT initiatives actually emerged starting a few years ago, but it's clearly in this 2015 time period accelerating in terms of the volumes of members and the activities going on within projects. And then the fourth thing I'd say about these initiatives is that they all cover a wide variety of projects from protocols, frameworks and tools. So there is a lot of activity that you can drill down to and get more details on from each of them. The bottom line of this slide is that standards define and open source implements, but there's a lot in play currently in this arena. Having just looked at the current state of play, now let's take a look at where some things are headed and what is the future shaping up to be for open source in IoT. As I was just describing, there's a lot of activity around the consumer-centric home automation markets. So definitely one area of opportunity is that there be more vertical industry use cases developed and initiatives specific to particular verticals. I think the verticals that are most ripe for this progress are automotive, the connected car space, industrial controls, and healthcare. As you also saw on the previous slide, there is quite a diversity of activities, some of which have initiatives that appear to be similar or parallel. So I think there remains some room to have some consolidation and an increasing coordination of effort. Certainly there is a room for that between the standards and the open source implementations, but also between one set of open source programs and another. What the chart from Vision Mobile on the bottom right on this chart shows is that they project the number of developers working on IoT will grow from approximately 300,000 in 2014 to 4.5 million by the end of the decade. Now, another survey I have seen from Eclipse.org actually shows that 80% of IT developers and general IT systems development work use open source. So I think with you take those two data points, we can expect a rapid growth in participation and adoption by those IT developers in Internet of Things open source. Also, as the new brand-supported platforms such as Google's Brillo shape the market, that will likely draw in more developers, not only into IoT, but into the use of open source in IoT. Before finishing up, I wanted to try and help you by giving some suggestions as to next steps you could take for your business in the use of open source in IoT. I think all of us, no matter our role in the ecosystem, do well to understand those license types and the various terms and conditions so that we are ensuring that we are strategically aligned with the needs of our business to the kind of license types and criteria. Also, we can look at the open source projects as great forums for us to find new talent, new partners, and observe how new business models work. If you're a hardware supplier, I would suggest that it behooves you to regularly review your open source strategy and how you are participating and investing in these initiatives of open source under such fast-changing conditions as we currently see. Based on that, you should update your product development plans and roadmaps as those initiatives emerge and mature and publish stable and tested open source code platforms. In the enterprise and innovator space, I think it is advisable that you understand your supplier strategies and how this impacts your sourcing options. Also, I would suggest you encourage your IT development staff use open source as a great set of tools for doing proof of concept and exploratory projects. It's a great way for them to develop expertise in the Internet of Things, and for your business unit and business management teams to gain education and understanding and help inform their requirements for projects they will future put out to bid. Systems integrators and solution providers, I think the open source tools are a wonderful set of equipment for you to use and build best practices around so that you can then drive low cost, fast time to market of customer solutions, and that you can use those tools as a wonderful way at low cost, low risk to do rapid hardware and software prototyping. So to close, let me recap with a few key takeaways. Open source is not the silver bullet for IoT, but it is a solid foundation, and it's here to stay and growing fast. We are still in the early days yet, but the fundamentals are in place. Much more is coming, and coming soon. So open source is likely to be in your future if it already is not in your present. So now is a good time to get more involved. Lastly, and to close, I just wanted to share with you some resources and links that I've referred to during the conversation, and hopefully this makes it easy for you to find out more information. Thank you for your time, and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. And please also let me know if you would love to talk more about the Internet of Things.